A young girl sends a covert signal to her dog, leaving the courtroom in shock as the judge halts proceedings. The room was utterly still, so quiet you could hear the faint scratch of pens and the soft groan of aged wooden benches. Every gaze was fixed on the delicate little girl perched at the witness stand, her legs too short to touch the floor, her hands clasped in her lap, gripping a tattered stuffed animal that had seen better times. Her name was Mira, and she was 8 years old. She wore a light yellow dress, the sort little girls don on Sundays or when they need to summon courage. But today wasn't Sunday. Today, Mira was the lone child in a courtroom packed with adults, testifying in a custody dispute that had grown grim and contentious. Her mother, seated on one side with a keen-eyed attorney, appeared both vulnerable and fierce, clutching a tissue. Across the room, Myra's father stared blankly, visibly trembling. But none of this mattered to Mira. She wasn't looking at either of them. Her eyes were on the dog sitting dutifully in the aisle, just beyond the courtroom's wooden barrier. His name was Max, a golden retriever with gentle, knowing eyes and a red vest that read, "Service dog, do not pet." Mira had only spoken to 3 people in the past 2 years. Trauma can do that to a child. She had stopped speaking entirely the day her world shattered, when her father, in a moment of unrestrained anger, shook her so violently she blacked out. The bruises faded, but something inside her voice didn't. No therapist could reach her, no medication worked. Only Max could. The court had permitted the dog to be by her side because, as her psychologist explained, Max wasn't merely a support animal. He was a lifeline, a connection to a world Mira no longer trusted. Judge Thornton, a stern woman in her 60s known for her by-the-book rulings, adjusted her glasses and gazed down at the girl. "Mira," she said softly, "I need to ask you a question. You don't have to speak if you're not ready. You can nod or shake your head, okay?" Mira didn't stir. Her fingers tightened around the stuffed animal, her eyes flicking briefly toward Max. Then, something extraordinary happened. Without a word, Mira raised her right hand and made a subtle motion, barely noticeable, a small circle in the air with her pinky finger. Max's ears twitched. He stood, trotted directly to the witness stand, turned to face the courtroom, and sat perfectly still. Another signal. Mira tapped her chest twice. Max barked once. The room froze. Judge Thornton leaned forward. "What does that mean?" she asked, glancing at the bailiff. The psychologist stepped forward from the back of the courtroom, her eyes wide. "That's a communication sequence we developed. Mira and Max practiced it for months. It's her way of telling the truth when she's too scared to speak." The judge blinked. She just said, "I'm ready, and I need to show you something." A long pause followed. The psychologist approached the bench slowly and handed the judge a small envelope. "She gave me this yesterday," she said. "If Max barks, you give this to the judge." Judge Thornton opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a hand-drawn picture depicting a little girl, clearly Mira, huddled in a corner, hands over her head. A large, furious man loomed over her, his face twisted in rage. In the corner of the drawing, Max barked at the man. Tears welled in the judge's eyes as she turned the picture over. There, in careful block letters, was a single line. "He says he loves me, but I'm only safe when he's not near." A gasp swept through the courtroom. The father shot to his feet. "This is absurd. That dog is trained. She could have—" "Sit down," the judge snapped, her voice sharp with outrage. "Or I will have you removed from this courtroom." Silence fell again. Mira didn't flinch. Max remained steady, his eyes locked on the girl he was devoted to protecting. Then Mira spoke. Her voice was quiet, raspy, but clear. "Max knows who keeps me safe," she said. "He remembers everything, even when I couldn't." The courtroom was stunned. Even the court reporter's fingers paused. Judge Thornton studied her for a long moment, then turned to the mother. "Ma'am, I'm granting you full custody, effective immediately." The mother burst into tears. The father tried to object, but the bailiff stepped in, firm and silent. But the moment wasn't over. As the judge gathered her papers and the gavel neared its final strike, she paused. She looked at Mira, then at Max. "You've said more in one signal than most adults do in 1,000 words," she whispered. With a trembling hand, she set down the gavel, not in judgment, but in awe. 6 months later, sunlight bathed the park bench where Mira sat, a drawing pad in her lap. Max curled beside her. A little boy approached and asked, "Can I pet your dog?" Mira looked up and smiled. "Only if you ask him first." The boy tilted his head. "How?" She tapped her chest twice. Max let out a joyful bark and wagged his tail. For the first time in a long time, Mira laughed. A genuine laugh. The kind that signaled the lifeline was working, the kind that signaled healing had begun. Uplifting message. Sometimes the quietest voices speak the most powerful truths, and sometimes the greatest protectors don't wear uniforms or carry badges. They walk on 4 legs, waiting for a signal to remind us that courage, love, and healing can arrive in the gentlest of forms. Would you like a narrated version of this story or a visual for sharing?